Welcome to this explainer. Right now, there's a frantic global race to hit our net zero climate goals. But beneath the massive headlines about clean energy grids and international security, there's a highly physical, structural tension that rarely gets talked about. Today, we're going to map out the entire nuclear fuel cycle to uncover a massive systemic bottleneck that is quietly threatening our clean energy future. Here's a wild number to start us off: 60%. Right now, primary mining production only meets about 60% of the world's nuclear reactor requirements. Think about that for a second. For every 10 units of nuclear fuel burned globally to keep our lights on and our industries running, we're only actually digging roughly 6 out of the ground. So, that obviously poses an urgent question. If we're only mining 60% of what we actually need, how exactly are the world's reactors still running? Well, this massive discrepancy reveals a hidden vulnerability in our energy supply chain. It forces us to ask where the rest of our fuel is actually coming from, because this is a structural tension that literally cannot last forever.
Let's dive into Section 1, the energy bottleneck and the global supply gap.
This is really a fascinating story of historical legacy clashing head-on with modern necessity. When you compare that 60% supplied by primary mining against the 100% required just to keep global reactors operational, you clearly see a structural deficit. The data shows that since roughly 1990, reactor demand has consistently outpaced primary mine production. Because of this, the global energy grid has been heavily relying on finite secondary sources of uranium just to bridge the gap. Moving on to Section 2, inside the fuel cycle and its immense industrial complexity. Before we can even talk about solving the supply problem, we have to map out the sheer industrial complexity required to turn a rock into electricity. It's like a massive puzzle. The cycle is broken down into 3 distinct phases: the front-end preparation, the middle phase of utilization in the reactor, and the back-end management of spent fuel. And as you'll see, each of these steps has its own massive infrastructural demands, incredibly long lead times, and inherent choke points. So the front-end process is grueling. Exploration and mining eventually yield something called yellowcake, which is a uranium oxide concentrate, but you can't just shovel yellowcake directly into a reactor. It actually has to be converted into a gas, uranium hexafluoride, and then highly enriched in a centrifuge. This increases its fissile U-235 isotope concentration from a natural 0.7% way up to 3 to 5%. Only after all of that can it be pressed into ceramic pellets, sealed into metal rods, and shipped as fuel. It is an incredibly demanding sequence.
And then, on the back end, the industry still fundamentally struggles with final disposition. Once the fuel is spent, managing it is a monumental task. The industry currently relies on interim storage, safely keeping spent fuel in water-filled pools or secure dry casks. Why? Because permanent deep geological repositories simply aren't commercially ready in key nations, including the United States. This back-end management creates ongoing political and social friction.
Which brings us to Section 3, supply and demand, and the coming collision. Think of our current situation kind of like living off a massive inheritance. Between 1950 and 1970, uranium production peaked for military purposes. This created an enormous historical overhang, basically a savings account of inventory left over from the Cold War. For the last 30 years, we've just been rapidly draining that savings account to fuel our civilian reactors. We've been bridging the gap using commercial and government inventories alongside absolutely incredible geopolitical programs like megatons to megawatts. That program alone literally converted 20,000 Russian nuclear warheads into power plant fuel. It's a phenomenal swords to plowshare story. But here is the critical catch. Those secondary supplies are finite, and they are projected to decline significantly post-2020.
And here is where causality hits hard. Just as those secondary inventories are drying up, demand is absolutely exploding. Global uranium requirements in a baseline scenario are jumping from around 69,000 tons in 2025 to over 150,000 tons by 2040. But when you factor in the Harmony vision, which targets a massive expansion to 1,000 gigawatts of nuclear capacity by 2050 to meet our climate targets, the deficit becomes incredibly stark. The secondary inventories are declining precisely when demand is skyrocketing.
Now, let's look at Section 4, supply choke points and geographic constraints. Geologically speaking, uranium is actually incredibly abundant. In fact, it's roughly 100 times more common in the Earth's crust than silver. So the issue isn't that the planet lacks uranium. The fundamental problem is all about economic concentration and physical access.
Because while it's everywhere, the high-quality stuff is concentrated. Roughly 75% of the world's high-confidence, low-cost resources sit in just 4 countries. Australia holds the largest reserves, Kazakhstan is the largest producer, Canada has the highest grade deposits, and Namibia rounds out the top 4. This extreme geographic concentration creates intense strategic dependencies and some serious supply chain risks.
And even if we do discover a new high-grade deposit in one of these regions, we can't just start digging. The regulatory lead times are immense. Complex licensing and ecological risk assessments take years. Plus, modern operations must actively engage stakeholders to earn a social license from local communities. Add all that up, and it easily takes 10 to 15 years to bring a new mine online. You literally cannot just command a new mine into existence overnight to meet a sudden supply shortfall.
So, how do we fix this? Section 5, bridging the gap through technological shift. Because we cannot simply flip a switch to open new conventional mines, the industry is frantically leaning into technological innovation. Sustainable growth relies heavily on extending the life of the resources we already have. They're attacking this bottleneck on multiple fronts, exploring recycling and advanced fast neutron reactors that reuse spent fuel, utilizing small modular reactors, or SMRs, that can safely tap into smaller deposits, and deploying intense efficiency measures. Utilities are even tweaking their extraction processes to get more fuel out of less natural uranium.
In-Situ Leaching is a perfect example of this systemic innovation. Instead of those massive open-pit mines that tear up the landscape, ISL involves circulating oxygenated groundwater right through underground ore bodies to dissolve and extract the uranium. It is a real game changer. It's radically efficient and now accounts for nearly 50% of global production, precisely because it drastically lowers both operational costs and the environmental impact.
Of course, there's also the promise of unconventional reserves. We actually have vast amounts of uranium trapped in phosphate rock, and an incredible 4 billion tons just floating around in the ocean seawater. But the economics are brutal. Extracting uranium from seawater currently costs roughly 10 times the market price. So it's scientifically possible, but entirely commercially prohibitive right now.
Ultimately, the central insight here, the structural reality we just have to face, is that the highly anticipated nuclear renaissance hinges entirely on our ability to aggressively scale new primary production today. We can't rely on Cold War stockpiles anymore, and future tech like seawater extraction isn't fully scalable just yet. We need new mines, and we need to navigate those brutal 10 to 15-year lead times immediately.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. As we rapidly drain our historical reserves, can our supply chains, our regulatory bodies, and our technological innovations actually keep pace with our 2050 climate goals? Understanding this systemic bottleneck is absolutely crucial, because without a secure, scalable fuel cycle, the entire promise of a clean energy future hangs in the balance.